I was at Waverley Station in Edinburgh when my back went into spasm. The pain was too much to bear, but there were no empty seats nearby, so I asked this young guy for his seat. I said to this young man, "Would you mind if I had your seat?" "What? What? I'm on the phone, for Christ's sake," he snapped. "There are seats over there. Go over there." Then he went back to his phone conversation. How dare he? He was at least 50 years my junior. I had a bottle of water with me. I took off the cap and I poured it on his head. He got up then. You should always be as polite, careful, and caring to people as you possibly can be. But if people are nasty and cruel, then fuck it, they've got it coming. James Woods. Oh, I see. He's a bit of a cunt, isn't he? You should have seen their faces, because he is. William Hurt was surly and self-involved. When I was introduced, I put out my hand to shake his. He simply turned away. I wasn't worth shaking hands with. What an arsehole. I wouldn't want to be straight for the world. In the dreadful AIDS time in the 80s, I lost 34 friends. Beautiful, talented, funny, warm, gay boys. I mourned them. It was a terrible loss. What the boys do in bed, I've never understood. I can hardly bear the thought of anal sex. I've never been fucked up the bum, and I'm happy to die wondering, as Mummy might say. But I won't castigate anyone for their sexual practices, unless they're cruel or violent. And when it became clear to him that I wouldn't fuck, but I would suck, we were on a roll. We met often to go to the cinema, or for Sunday tea parties. His pleasure gave me pleasure, and proved the template for my sexual activities until I was initiated into the joys of lesbianism. I did a great deal of sucking off, because I seemed to be good at it, and it was all I could do. I remember a lusty Hungarian student who once achieved orgasm 7 times in a session. So good for him, so tiring for me. I wasn't going to fuck, you see. I knew I wasn't going to do that because I had promised my parents I wouldn't. Jewish girls were known for sucking off. The man is satisfied and we don't get pregnant. Oral skill enhances your popularity, and if I'm honest, I think I enjoyed the power it lent me. My friend's favourite story of my misdemeanours happened in the Newnham bike shed. One evening, late after rehearsals, I was in the bike shed sucking someone off, and Leslie Cook, my moral tutor, was parking her bike and saw me. She didn't see the bloke as he was in the shadows, but she saw me bending down over something and said, "Good night, Miriam." "Good night, Miss Cook," came my polite reply, my usual clear diction muddied as my mouth was full of cock. I didn't just suck off random strangers, however. In fact, I now had a boyfriend. In Newnham Old Hall dining room at breakfast, I could be relied on to spill the beans on whomever I had sucked off the night before. While no penis has ever been inside me, I have always been amused by them. Even now, I find myself looking at where the penis bulges in men's trousers. It's such an odd dangler to have, something hanging outside yourself. Our naughty areas are contained, for the most part, within our bodies, but men have to deal with this extra stalk. It's a fascinating subject that people simply don't discuss enough. I've always asked, how old were you when you had your first fuck? It's a good way of getting a reaction, because sometimes, if you prick people, they respond genuinely, and that's what I seek, a genuine response. I delight in the whole physical aspect of life, and find sex and penises, vaginas and knickers, and lavatories and farting hugely funny. And breasts. I love talking about breasts. They make me laugh. I took, honestly, no more than a minute. When I returned to the car, there was a motorcycle policeman in jackboots writing a parking ticket. "How dare you do that? I was only up there a minute." He slapped the parking ticket under my windscreen wiper. "Well, you've parked on a double yellow line," he replied. I lost my temper. I snatched the ticket off the windscreen, tore it into little pieces, and threw them in the air. "You've got a dick that small!" I shouted, indicating a very small member with my index finger and thumb. The policeman's mood darkened. "Right. Now I'm doing you for parking on a double yellow line and for littering." He was writing more in his notebook. I was enraged. "Go on, then. Arrest me. I don't care what you do," I bellowed. "Miss, I'm going to have to take you to a police station," he said. "I demand to be taken to a police station," I retorted. The policeman radioed for backup. Because of the state opening of Parliament, there was a fleet of police cars in the area. Seconds later, 3 panda cars flashing blue lights screamed up behind me. 6 more policemen climbed out and joined us. They shoved their arms under my armpits and half lifted, half frog-marched me across the road, my little legs wriggling in the air. By this time, quite a crowd of curious onlookers had gathered. I shouted out, "You see what happens in England?" And I was pushed into the back seat of a police car. I was taken to Bow Street Police Station and led to the holding area. I was still so angry I wasn't even frightened. The police officer looked a little deflated. My middle-class confidence needled him. He thought, "I'll show that cocky bitch." Yes, I am imagining that's what he thought because of his next words. "You will have to be examined." The station sergeant took me into a private examination room and told me to wait as he was going to call the matron, and locked the door behind him. I guessed that the matron would give me an intimate physical examination to look for drugs, so while I was waiting I took off all my clothes. I was completely naked. When the matron walked in, she took one look at me and said, "You been here before?" "I most certainly have not," I retorted. She asked me to lie on an examination table and proceeded to carry out a vaginal examination. And she also poked up my arse. Obviously she came away empty-handed. They thought being fingered in the vagina would distress me. How wrong they were. I thought all my Christmases had come at once. What I'm saying is that I don't come to bed armed with electrical goods, or indeed anything. The Californian professor told me in a deep voice, "The repertoire of love is wide." When I didn't say anything, she inquired, "Have you ever experienced pain in the course of love?" Of course, I said no, because I hadn't. Indeed, if anybody tried to hurt me, never mind the repertoire of love, I'd biff them from here to Doncaster. She then waxed lyrical about how magical and fantastic it was. I had no idea what she meant. "Do you want me to hit you?" I ventured. She answered, yes, she would like me to hit her, with a hairbrush. I got out of bed, went to the dressing table, and picked one up. "This one?" I asked. "Yeah, why not?" "I want you to hurt me." She turned over and exposed her buttocks. I raised the hairbrush high and gave them a good whack. She screamed, "Not that hard!" Well, I didn't know, did I? I'll never make a good dominatrix.